Appreciate that. Okay, folks, like I said, if you have any questions, please either type them in or raise your hand and we will unmute your line. And I'm not seeing any questions, so we will move forward into our presentation for this evening. I always enjoy the leadership series that we do because it really is something that all of us need to get a firm grasp on. If you ever want to be truly successful in this industry, there's a couple of things that you really need to get a hold of, and one of them are leadership skills. You need to hone your leadership skills, and there are several books out there you can read. There's several things you can do, but one of the things we like to do is to continue our leadership series. It's called the 21 Laws of Leadership, I believe, if I said that correctly. But our next speaker is going to continue that series with us, and he's a good friend of mine. I've had the pleasure of spending some time in his home, and him and his wife are some of the most gracious hostesses people, if that makes sense, that I've ever had the chance to hang out with. Just gracious folks. I really felt at home in his home, and Dr. Fran is a retired dental specialist with over 35 years of success in relationship marketing. He has reached the top levels in 4 companies, building teams of hundreds of thousands of people during his career, and thrives on helping his members achieve success as well. He's served on associate advisory boards and medical advisory boards in the industry. He's been sought after as a presenter, a trainer, motivator, coach, and mentor. And some people like to call me the Wizard of Oz, but I call him the Wizard of Wise. So without further ado, I want to introduce Doc Fran.
Well, Casper, thanks so much for that lovely introduction. I sensed that you actually got choked up when you were telling about that, coming down and spending time with us. So,
it was fun.
To hear.
I had fun, man.
It was fun.
I was fishing.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
And I mean, you know, and we're better to be in December, but Southern Florida. So exactly. With that said, and good evening, everybody. It really is exciting. I appreciate your patience while I had a little hiatus. Nancy and I went to St. Martin's for a few weeks to celebrate our 40th anniversary. So I didn't have to do my leadership training for a couple of Tuesdays in a row here. But I appreciate you coming back. We're at law number 16 of 21. And the name of this law is the Law of the Big Mo. And the subtitle for that is, in slide 1, Casper, momentum is a leader's best friend. Now, folks, we all know as leaders that we face the challenge of creating change in an organization, and the key to creating positive change is momentum, and that's what I call the Big Mo. Now, how many of you out there are sailors? I've been a sailor since I was 10 years old, and as a sailor, I know you can't steer a ship that isn't moving forward. And you as strong leaders need to understand that principle. And in order to change direction, in order to move in a new direction, you first have to create some forward progress. And that's the law of the Big Mo. Now, I saw a movie several years ago, and I'm sure most of you have as well. It was called Stand and Deliver. It was a very eloquently done movie. It was a very inspirational movie, and it's about a real-life teacher named Jaime Escalante who worked at probably one of the worst high schools in the nation, Garfield High School in East Los Angeles, California. And the movie focused on Escalante's ability to teach, but the real story behind that movie is actually a study of the law of the Big Mo. Now, teaching, motivating, and leading were in Jaime Escalante's blood, and at the age of 43, he was hired by Garfield High to teach computer science. But when he arrived at Garfield on the first day of class, he found out that there had been no funding for computers and that he was going to be teaching basic math. Now, that turned out, how many of you would feel a little bit frustrated at that point when someone completely changed the playing field that you had been hired and had been gearing up to do? Ever
Definitely.
feel that way in network marketing?
Definitely.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that challenge turned out to be the least of Escalante's problems. Now, Garfield High, which had been quiet during his summertime interview, was now a scene of seething chaos, and discipline was virtually non-existent. Escalante discovered that the school's liberal principal named Alex Avilés was actually encouraging gang recognition on the school campus. He had decided that student gang members needed validation and more opportunities to identify with the school. So he encouraged 18 different gangs to put up their placas or gang symbols in different areas of the campus to serve as a meeting place for them. Can you imagine? I mean, having been a teacher, I really couldn't begin to imagine the chaos that would create. Well, the break came as a result for Escalante of what appeared to be a major setback, and the administrators at Garfield were informed that the school was in danger of losing its accreditation, and so the district removed Principal Avilés and replaced him with a better leader. And though he was at the school only 2 years, Principal Posamoto saved Garfield from losing its accreditation, and he actually stopped the negative momentum that the school was experiencing. Next slide, please. Now, Escalante was the one who came up with the idea of preparing students to take an advanced placement exam. These were just getting started in the late 70s. Now, the reality was that a few AP tests had been given, but not anything to amount to any type of an impact. And that's where Escalante's talents came into play. He believed that the school could make a positive impact on the students' lives, and that the way to start that ball rolling was to challenge the school's best and brightest students with an AP calculus test. Those of you that have taken calculus will understand that that was a steep gradient, to say the least. In the fall of 1978, Escalante organized the first of his calculus classes, and he was able to find only 14 students. By late spring, he was down to only 5 students that remained in the class. All of them took the AP test, but only 2 of the 5 passed it. Now, how would you feel? How many of you have experienced starting 5 people or 6 people and finding out that only 1 or 2 of them actually do what's necessary to duplicate what you've done?
Sounds like my personal sponsorship.
It's very common in our industry. And he was disappointed, but he refused to give up, especially since he felt he had made some progress. He knew that if he could just build some momentum, things at the school could turn around. Now, leaders always find a way to make things happen. But getting his students prepared was more difficult. He introduced algebra and trig to students in the lower level classes. He got some of his colleagues in the school to start to do the same. And he started to rally support for a summer program to teach advanced math to the students. And over time, the students in the school began to respond and improve. The next slide, please. And it really does start with a little progress. The next fall, Escalante put together another calculus class, this time with 9 students. At the end of the year, 8 took the test and 6 passed. He was clearly making progress. The final group of students, numbering 18, who are the subject of the movie itself, Stand and Deliver, is really where that story reaches the subject of the movie. When they took that test in May, they felt they had done very well. But there was a problem, and one that threatened to really destroy Escalante and his program. The testers accused Escalante's students of cheating in the AP exam. The students agreed to retake the test, and even though they'd been out of school and hadn't studied calculus for 3 months, every single student repassed the AP test, and Escalante's rate was 100%. Now, what could have killed the momentum that Escalante had built at Garfield turned into to be a real momentum builder. Students at the school became very confident. People within the community rallied around Escalante and his program, and the publicity surrounding the test results gave a push of momentum that made it possible for East Los Angeles College to actually start a program in the summer that Escalante had been asking them to do for his students. How many of you on the call have experienced that as you start to experience success, success breeds success. And before you know it, you are in momentum and things become much easier. In 1987, 9 years after the start, 129 students took the AP Calculus test. 85 of them received college credit. Garfield High in East Los Angeles, once considered the sinkhole of the district, produced 27% of all passing AP Calculus test scores by Mexican-American students in the entire United States. Can momentum create big impacts? You guys be the judge. Next slide, please. Now, not only were the benefits of the law of the Big Mo felt by all of Garfield High students, the school actually started offering classes to prepare students for AP exams in other academic disciplines. And in time, Garfield was holding regular AP classes in Spanish, history, European history, biology, physics, French, government, and computer science. In 1987, 9 years after Escalante started the program, Garfield students took more than 325 AP exams. At the same time, Garfield had developed a waiting list of more than 400 students from areas outside its boundaries wanting to enroll. The school that was once the laughingstock of the district, guys, that had almost lost its accreditation, had become one of the top 3 inner-city schools in the entire nation. Do you think momentum is powerful? Next slide, Catherine. Now, guys, this statement is true. It takes a leader to create momentum. Followers catch it. Managers are able to continue it once it has begun. Harry Truman once said, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. But for leaders, the statement should be changed to read, if you can't make some heat, get out of the kitchen. Because that's what it takes to create momentum. Next slide. Momentum really is a leader's best friend. Sometimes it's the only difference between losing and winning. Momentum also makes a huge difference in your organization. When you have no momentum, even the simplest task can seem to be insurmountable problems. How heavy is that phone on the first 5, 10, 15 calls that you make, guys, when you're beginning your business? But when you get that first 2 or 3 yeses, and then you find that first partner that actually begins to duplicate your vision and your efforts. You have momentum on your side. The future starts to look bright. Obstacles appear small, and troubles seem temporary. Next slide. When leaders have momentum on their side, guys, people think that they're geniuses. Their organizations look past their shortcomings. Momentum truly changes people's perspective of you as a leader. Next slide, please. When leadership is strong and there's momentum in an organization, people are motivated and inspired to perform at higher levels than even they thought possible. They become effective beyond their own hopes and expectations. Next slide. Have you ever been water skiing? If you have, you know it's harder to get up on the water than it is to steer once you're up there. For a moment, you might believe you can't hold on to that tow rope another second, but then the force of the water drives your skis onto the surface, and off you go. At that point, you're able to make turns with a subtle shift of weight from one foot to another and virtually no effort. That's the way momentum of leadership works. Getting started, guys, is always the struggle. I once heard it said that 90% of the effort is spent lifting your organization off the launch pad. The analogy directly is to these huge rocket ships that we've seen launched into space with the shuttle program. 90% of all the fuel and effort is taken to lift that rocket the first 12 inches off the pad. The other 10% of force takes it all the way to the space and back. Unbelievable. But once you're moving forward, you can see that you really can start to do amazing things with virtually no effort. Next slide. With enough momentum, nearly any kind of change is possible for your organization. As you've seen, that was true for Garfield High School, considered by many people to be a place with no hope, and it can certainly be true for any organization. Momentum in your organization, guys, puts victory within reach. If your desire is to do great things with your organization, never overlook the power of momentum. It truly is the leader's best friend. If you can develop it, you can do almost anything, guys. That's the power of the Big Mo. With that, I appreciate your attention. I am Dr. Fran, your partner for success. And next time, we'll have the law of priorities. Back to you, Casper.